fields that are south of the lane that leads to Belle Grove, which again is another half a mile off to the south. What is being depicted here is that the Confederates have driven the 19th Corps out of their trenches, and they are looting the Federal camps. The Confederates have come here totally, famished almost, with very few supplies, and you see the Confederates moving through the camps, looting those camps. The Federal Army had their bacon cooked early in the morning. They're ready to go, and the Confederates wound up getting breakfast. They surprised them early in the morning, just about 6 o'clock in the morning. The early actions happened around 5:30, but by this time they're attacking the 19th Corps camp. Actually, the attack came because Gordon led a column of men around the end of the mountain. And if you look back your east, you'll see Signal Knob. Back over that way, you have to be where you can see out through the tents. But if you look back there, those men came all the way across that river. They forded the river there, marched up, made an attack on Thoburn's camp first at Cedar Creek, which is down at the end of Bowman Mill Road, and then they met up with Gordon's guys that had marched further to the north and turned, flanked left, marched right into George Crook's infantry camp. One division led by Rutherford B. Hayes. You might have heard of him as a president later. And the other guy was a Colonel Kitching's camp. 2 divisions there. They surprised them, drove them across the Valley Pike into the 19th Corps trench line. And as they did, a notable event occurred there. There was a colonel by the name of Molyneux who realized what was going on. They had been up early because they were supposed to be conducting a reconnaissance toward Strasburg, and they were supposed to begin that at about 4:30. They were up, had cooked their breakfast, eaten, and were preparing to march down the Valley Pike into Strasburg. And so they were prepared to receive this infantry attack. Prior to that, Ramseur had as Ramseur advanced, Gordon and Ramseur advanced to the west from the east of the Valley Pike over across this side of the Valley Pike. There's a big hollow down there, which is now where about the National Park headquarters is. If you know where that is, if you don't, ride south down the Valley Pike and you'll see that. Just below there's a big hollow in there. And as Gordon's men topped the ridge to the east of that hollow, William Emory, the commander of the 19th Army Corps, sent a brigade under the command of Stephen Thomas. They came from the western end, middle to western end of the 19th Corps trench line. They marched through the fields to the pike, crossed the pike, went into that hollow. There they met a disaster because Gordon's entire force fell on those guys. There is a monument back there that depicts the valor. I think there was like 96 men killed or whatever there. That monument tells you that story. Anyhow, Stephen Thomas's brigade was annihilated there. Gordon's guys pour across the pike into the area a little bit south of where the gate is, where the entrance gate here is, a little bit south of there. They pour across the pike into the Federal camps. And the Federals have no choice. The Federals are not able to retreat up the pike because Gordon holds the pike. And they can't retreat in the face of the Confederates. They have to actually retreat out the back side of their camp or the west end of their trench line and retreat beyond Belle Grove, back up what's called Meadow Brook, and they will be out of the fight for a while as they retreat. Now, by that time, it's important to note that Thoburn's division over on the Cedar Creek Hills, I'll call it, has been almost virtually destroyed. Coburn himself is wounded. He will die later in Middletown. Some say he was murdered in Middletown. And his division of the 8th Corps, along with Rutherford Hayes' division and Kitching's division, are all pretty much destroyed and very ineffective and without any battlefield cohesion at that point in time. It is left to the 19th Corps, but they are also driven from their trenches, and they are driven in not as bad a confusion and not without as many casualties, but with a great number of casualties as well. Now, as I say, Molyneux had a prepared trench line, which is, maybe 200 yards from the pike, west of the pike, and those trenches are still there. And Molyneux's guys realize what is going on, and they realize Gordon has passed across the pike and is actually north of them on the field. Their only hope is to reverse the trenches. And you can see there, if you take that hike on that 19th Corps trench line, there's a marker there that tells you that, and you can see that the earth has been piled from the south side of the trenches to the north side of the trenches, where they're attempting to hold off these Confederates that have crossed the pike. They realize that's not going to work soon, and they will follow the rest of the Federal Army out of the trenches to the rear and back beyond Bell Grove in what is called the hollow formed by Meadow Brook. There is I should announce it. I'm getting paid to do this. No, I'm not really. But I should announce that there is a great depiction of that Reverse the Trenches by a noted Valley artist, Civil War artist, that happens to be sitting right behind me on this truck tailgate, by the name of Keith Rocco. A beautiful print, as all of his prints are, and I think it is available for sale at the headquarters. And it depicts General Molyneux ordering his men to reverse the trenches, throw the dirt on the north side, and try to stem the tide of Gordon's Confederates peeling across the pike. Gordon, Terry, Ramseur. Ramseur is a little bit north, and Ramseur will actually come more or less into this field that we're out here looking on right now. And I should tell you that the little white house down in the hollow is a period house, was here at the time. That is known as the Heater House, and that house was on the field at that time. I've been asked to also call your attention to the sponsors for today's event. First Bank in Strasburg, offices in Winchester and throughout the valley, the Elks Club, Schaefer's Barbecue, just immediately north of this field in the building that's up there at the end of the line, at the right end of the line. Rudolph's Small Engine Repair. He sells lawnmowers, fixes small engines at the north end of Tom's Brook. Welsh Sound is what has me talking on this microphone today. A great guy. Met him earlier this morning, and he's done a fantastic job. I encourage you to, if you have time, and the reenactment will be over at 3 o'clock. If you have time, I encourage you to visit the 19th Corps trench site, because you can actually take a walk along a mile of trenches and actually see the ditches that the real guys dug in 1864. Very important that is preserved. And you can thank the Cedar Creek Battlefield Foundation. I remember I was a board member of that thing, and I remember when that happened. And I'm telling you, there were a lot of sweat that dropped off the noses of people when, what's that? Okay, yeah, you see the Confederates coming through the federal camps. They've looted the camp, grabbed a couple strips of bacon. They feel a lot better. They've been at it. They started marching last night at midnight, but they've arrived on the field. They've driven the 19th Corps out of their trenches, and they're looting the camp coming through. The Federals will organize as best they can. To your right out here to receive the Confederate attack. But here come the Confederates in the early morning. Remember that and the interesting thing is, because of Early's superb planning, the Confederates were absolutely able to bring a bigger force on the field each time than at the point at which they were attacking the Federal Army, other than the cavalry fight that we discussed earlier. Oh yeah. Now, as the routed and disorganized Federal 19th Corps makes their hasty retreat through the area beyond Belle Grove. Now, Belle Grove is a little bit to the left of where you see the yellow tower buildings over here. If you look that way and you were a little bit to the left, that is the Belle Grove house. And they're a little bit to the left. They will be going to the rear of that house down through the hollow formed by Meadow Brook. As they make their retreat through this area, the Confederate force also is becoming somewhat disorganized, because there are guys that are looting the camps and this commands. And by the way, don't forget the issue of the fog. There's a heavy fog, and still by this time you can barely see people that are 75 yards away. So it is a surprise attack that worked very well for the Confederates early in the morning. The fields in front of you at the time of 1864, in October of 1864, would have been full of animals that had been kept in the Federal camp running around, horses, wagons trying to get away, and soldiers that are running for their very life out in front of you. Here comes Gordon's guys from across the pike. They'll join in the Confederate effort. Things are going to get worse for the Federals here pretty quick, and more men coming on the field all the time. In the early morning attack, the only guy that was not initially engaged was a guy by the name of Ward Gabriel and his Virginia units. These guys represent Terry's Stonewall Brigade. A lot of very important Southern infantry, decimated by this time, poor condition, but still very valiant. Now these are the guys that have driven Stephen Thomas's men out of the hollow there below the park headquarters, and have come on the field, come across the pike, and are now on the field. These guys in front of you are simulating what exactly really did happen on October the 19th, 1864. These two sides that's fought on this field right in front of you. Oh, there's a guy that got shot right there. How about that? These guys that you see right in front passing us left to right is just about the approximate size of a regiment in the day in 1864. The ranks had been decimated so much that this is about like they are. And you see they're beginning to drive the Federals. The Federals are beginning to retreat. And this is the way they would fight at that point in time. Fire a volley, everybody stops and loads. Get ready for the next volley. The Confederates are buoyed with their success thus far. They have driven 2 Federal Army Corps way more than twice their number from the field. And they're buoyed with their success. Here comes some more Confederates on the field. The process is gaining. The Federals are falling back. As the Federals fall back, the Confederates continue their advance. Their advance will eventually carry them beyond the town of Middletown, but it is fought like you're watching today, step by step, 100 yards by 100 yards. The Heater family living in the little white house down in the hollow there would certainly be in the basement by now. William Emery, the commander of the 19th Army Corps, was roused awake by the early morning attack. He was not ready for the fight, nor were virtually anyone in the Federal camps. But by now, Emery is out on the field, and of course, Sheridan is not present at the time. Sheridan is in Winchester, and when all this is occurring, and Emery takes good command here, and he is asking for help from the Federal Army's 6th Army Corps, which is way off in our front, way over beyond the green trees camped over there, and he is asking for help to help speed this retreat. And he will get some help, and the Confederates will begin to put up a resistance as they get toward the end of this field. This being the actual field that occurred on as well. Again, the Rebs are gaining ground. Now the Confederate artillery comes on the field. Tom Carter brings the Confederate artillery from Fisher's Hill. They were camped at Fisher's Hill. They waited a little behind because they didn't want to have noise on the Valley Pike that the Federals could hear. And they're now coming on the field. They're going to put their guns into battery. They will put as many as 30 guns in battery in the actual day. But they're going to be firing over the head of their infantry into the retreating Federals. And it becomes almost a panic for the Federal Army. trying to stem the tide of this Confederate advance, Lieutenant Hezekiah's battery, Hezekiah Hickson's 17th Battery, Indiana Light Artillery, was actually deployed right in the yard of the Belgrove Mansion and was now rapidly firing east across the pike at Gordon's and Ramseur's advancing forces. They would be firing at these guys you see right out here in your front. The efforts of Emory's defense paid dividends in that the 6th Corps, about 8,000 men in that, have not yet been attacked and are beginning to come on the field. Notice that the federal guns are beginning to reply over on the far right. Many Confederate cannon were captured that morning in the early dawn. Some over on Covert's position at Cedar Creek, more in Hayes and in camp east of the pike, and then a great deal in the 19th Army Corps down here in the line of trenches we talked about a while ago. It's looking pretty good for the CSA right now. The big guns begin to fire. And actually many of these, many cannon came into battery just about where you parked your cars on the east side of the pike, but up on that knoll. And they're firing across Middletown, into Middletown, and into these fields from over there. Here they go. Between the fog and the smoke that you see that early morning, and remember that we're talking about 30,000 men fighting here, not 1,500. So you can imagine 25 times this many guns going off and 30 guns instead of 10. Just imagine the smoke and the fog mix and how the field was obscured and people couldn't see one place to another. Very hard to determine who you're shooting at. A lot of confusion on this field in the early morning of October 19th. We're probably in the neighborhood of 7:30 in the morning at this point in time. Yeah, as you see out here, you know, when you think about modern day gunfire, you don't see the smoke that you see here. This is smoke from black powder made out of the cannons and out of the individual rifles. And with that many men firing on a field this size, you can just imagine how hard it was to see someone or know who you were seeing or how to give commands to your unit. And the roar of the battle was tremendous as well. So you just have to imagine how difficult it was to see where you were. And of course, we didn't have cell phones back then, and you couldn't call the commander and do all that. So you can just imagine what really happened here. And by this time in the morning, there are probably 3,000, if you will, 3,000 federal casualties on the field that would be killed, wounded, and captured. That's a lot of people and of course people are dragging wounded people back. The hospitals will be created in Middletown on north to Stevens City, be full of Union wounded. At Cedar Creek, back just across the creek, the notable house, the Stickley House there, served as a hospital. They said that the amputated legs and arms were higher than the window that they pitched them out of as they made the amputations on the kitchen table of the Stickley family that lived there during the war. Now remember that as the 6th Army Corps way off to your front, is beginning to come on the field and is aroused and in camp and getting going. Remember that they are 8,000 strong. They're almost as strong as Early's entire infantry in his army. So they're going to have a big effect on this fight later in the day. As what you see transpiring is going on, and we talked about the 6th Corps a moment ago. The 6th Corps is coming on the field right now. You see them way off in the front coming on the field. Brigadier General George Washington Getty will march his entire 2nd Division of the 6th Army Corps on to aid General Emory on this field, because, I mean, Emory's in a lot of trouble. You can see that he's been driven far north. Now, the field that we're using here doesn't depict as we said earlier, does not depict the entire size. What we see now is actually going on at the far end of this field, pretty much where you see the cannon spoke, way off to the front left, actually occurring on this field. But a lot of these guys have now gone into Middletown and are trying to reform beyond Middletown. Getty will take charge of this affair, though. But by now, the Confederates are starting to straggle. They've lost men as well, and their ranks are not as full as they were in the early morning. We don't want to talk a lot about many of them are remaining in camp, in the federal camp, but obviously there were some, because most of them needed a pair of shoes, and if the Federals ran out of camp and left their shoes, somebody's going to be wearing those, and they're going to have on a brown or gray uniform. But at any rate, the Confederates become a little bit disorganized as this affair is going on. Getty's guys from the 6th Army Corps will occupy the extreme western end of the Federal infantry line on the field. And you can see them moving up on the hill way down in your front, down there. They'll become the anchor of the Federal line. It's about 7:30 in the morning. The attack of the 19th Corps and on the 8th Corps had cost well over 3,000 casualties by this time. And those 2 corps, the 8th and the 19th, had been driven from the field in disarray. As we mentioned earlier this morning, the Confederate cavalry had really failed in their effort to keep the Federal cavalry occupied, and now Wesley Merritt sends Thomas Devon's brigade of Federal cavalry over here to the pike to help in the Federal effort and to help reorganize the Federal infantry. By this time, Sheridan is roused awake in Winchester and is wondering what's going on, and has summoned for his mount, and will soon begin his ride from Winchester to, and very interesting that Sheridan rode a horse by the name of Renzi, but after this affair and after Thomas Buchanan Reed wrote that famous poem, Sheridan renamed his horse Winchester after this affair. It really is at this time that right now is when Jubal Early needed an effective cavalry force to drive the disorganized Federal infantry off the field and way beyond where they could reform. if there had been a sufficient cavalry force, and I'm talking 3,000-4,000 mounted men in good condition, this affair would have turned out a whole lot differently. Also, by about this time, Wharton's infantry had joined the Confederate ranks. Coming up the pike, they marched with the artillery, and they were initially the reserve, but they are brought to the front as the Federals are driven out of their Cedar Creek camps. This is a little bit early, but somewhere along this time, Gordon and Early will meet just about where the Belgrove Lane is down there, and they will talk about what great success the Federals have had this morning. And Gordon is obstinate about this, that the Confederates need to press the attack, but they're very disorganized, unable really to do that. Early will say, you know, this is glory enough for one day. And remember that Early has lost Winchester, he has lost Fisher's Hill, he has lost Tom's Brook. So it's about time for him to win one. And he's saying, you know, this is looking better. This is glory enough for one day. Gordon says, oh no, can't stop. We got to keep driving them. We got to keep driving them. We've got to keep driving them. Getty's guys you see coming on the field now will somewhat slow down the Federal retreat, and also will retard a little bit the Confederate progress in the attack. There's a few dead ones laying out here on the field, I see. William Emery's 19th Corps hastily formed line had largely dissipated now, but Getty's guys coming on the field were very still intact. It's a large body of guys. You see them down there in the bottom, and they're full of fight, ready to redeem the Federals' day. So the newly formed U.S. line will stretch from the Valley Pike all the way to the west of Middletown. At about 8 o'clock, a half an hour after we just talked about, Getty will notice a large round hill just a little bit to the west of Middletown, which is known as Cemetery Hill. It was the Middletown Cemetery at the time. Getty will recognize that as a defensible position, and he will place his his division of 3 brigades in a semicircle arrangement around that notable hill. Colonel James Warner's brigade was on the right or the west of the line. Warner's men could see the elements of the 19th Corps still retreating to the west, though the pursuit had somewhat subsided and had slowed down a great deal. The Confederate artillery is in battery now, driving the Federals as well. Remember the guys' artillery demonstration this morning. They could fire those guns between 1,000 and 1,500 yards. And so there are a lot of shells shrieking into the Federal ranks. You can see Getty's 6th Corps guys down in the bottom. They're gonna depict the formation in very short order around what we call Cemetery Hill. There'll be a semicircle arrangement and the Confederates will intend to drive them off that hill. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Interesting that the speed of sound is 750, and so when you see the flash from the gun, there's a pause till you hear the bang. These guys are moving north, and they're going to go into their semicircle formation around Cemetery Hill. Now, actually, the Middletown Cemetery is still there, and it is about a half a mile from the center of town, and you may visit that today if you like. This fight actually occurred on that very ground there in that cemetery. Getty's division heading up the hill to take position in the cemetery. The Confederates are preparing to, they will assault that position 3 times. As I said earlier, Colonel James Warner's brigade was on the right. If you're standing behind the Federal line looking south, on your right, or west, if you will, was Colonel James Warner's brigade, and on Warner's left, on Warner's left, the Vermont brigade, commanded that day by Brigadier General Lewis Grant, extended across a lane that runs along the Middletown Cemetery to join the 3rd Brigade, commanded by Brigadier General Daniel Bidwell. Bidwell's men were actually positioned across the hill, right in among the gravestones of the deceased residents of the Middletown Cemetery. The Brigade of Cavalry, commanded by Alphaeus Moore, came from the area of Front Royal to Middletown and took a dismounted position on the left or on the east of Bidwell's line, extending almost to the Valley Pike. As we talked about earlier, Devon's Brigade of Cavalry, having been detached from the Heights Chapel fight, were from the almost non-existent cavalry fight on the back road, took position from the Valley Pike to a little bit east of the Valley Pike, almost right in the center of the town of Middletown. Remember that the Confederates had captured a great number, some 32 guns of the Federals that morning, and many of those guns are now being served on the knoll, which is actually behind you and across the pike, firing at the Federals that are in the Middletown Cemetery. Now, the Confederate assault on the Federal line in the cemetery was really a combined effort with General Pegram's division on the left and Ramseur's division on the right, nearer the pike. Both Pegram and Ramseur had been part of Gordon's great advance that morning, driving the Federals out of the 19th Corps camps. They're the guys that came across the pike. And remember that these guys started marching the night before at around midnight. And actually, I think they forded the Shenandoah, well, they crossed the Shenandoah River there just a little bit east of Fisher's Hill, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, and began marching all the way around the mountain, all the way from Cedar Creek up to this field, have driven the guys. I think they've taken a 7-mile hike by now, carrying their armament, their muskets, and so these guys are a little bit fatigued by this time. Brian Grimes' North Carolina brigade, advancing from the Valley Pike, heading northwest, will be the first wave of assault on the Federals in the cemetery. Colonel Amasa Tracy of the 2nd Vermont told his men, hold your fire until you could see them coming through the now rising fog. So the fog had lifted a couple of feet off the ground, but it was still, the battlefield is very obscured at this time in the morning. And he says, wait until you can see them to shoot. And as Grimes' men come into view going up the hill at the Middletown Cemetery, Tracy gives the command to fire, and the Federals clobber the Grimes' infantry with a wicked volley from out of the cemetery. You may notice the casualties on the field now out here in your front, on the north end of the field. First Confederate attack on the cemetery was supposed to be a combined effort with Grimes' North Carolina brigade and Pegram's division. And as Patrick pointed out to me a moment ago here, by this time it is a very disjointed affair. There are some guys further ahead than the other guys, some guys further behind. And so the defense of the cemetery is a very important part of the battle at this point in time, but the Confederate steam has begun to slow down by this time. You see the fight going on in the cemetery there now. You see the federal flag, the yellow flag represents Getty's guys and their defense in the cemetery. The Confederates are advancing and firing against them. Grimes' brigade will actually make 2 assaults on that cemetery. The second time they came very near to the federal line. And a desperate hand-to-hand fight developed as Bidwell's federal brigade in the cemetery was pushed down the north side of the hill. The Federals succeeded in holding their position as Grimes' men then fell back across Meadowbrook to reform for another attempt. Another attempt is expected to occur. About this time, Tom Carter's CSA batteries unleashed a furious cannonade against the Federal cemetery position. During this barrage, Federal General Bidwell was struck by an artillery round that tore through his left shoulder, knocked him from his horse, and that wound proved to be fatal in just an hour or 2. A Federal general lost on the field right in the cemetery. My good friend Keith Rocco also portrayed that in another Civil War piece of art that is available at the Cedar Creek headquarters. Actually, Bidwell was removed from the field and by ambulance carried to Newtown, which is now today's Stevens City, which is about 5 miles north of where the cemetery position was. Now comes another assault, the third assault. As mentioned earlier, Wharton had come on the field with about 1,200 men. Wharton's men had not yet participated in the early morning attack. It's their turn to assault the cemetery. They advanced through the cemetery from the southeast. That would be, we're on the east side of the cemetery and we're south of the cemetery, but somewhat over the hill where the trees are out in the north end of our field here. As you approach that cemetery, those guys walked through a small ravine that led right toward that cemetery. And the ravine was wooded at the time. The fog was still there in the low ground in the ravine, making them not very apparent to the Federals that were defending the cemetery position. They started their advance up the hill, and another volley from Bidwell's brigade forced them back down the hill. They tried once again and were driven back down the hill, across Meadow Run, and back toward Middletown. It is now just about 9 o'clock in the morning. Wharton received some reinforcement from Wofford's brigade of Kershaw's division. Remember that Kershaw was the guy that had attacked Thoburn's camp early in the morning, and they have come all the way from Cedar Creek near the Shenandoah River, near Cedar Creek's mouth at the Shenandoah River, all the way onto this field. Another bunch of worn out guys, but they will reinforce Wharton's brigade, which has been shot up from their attacks on the cemetery. They are expected any moment to receive orders for another assault, but all of a sudden that order never came. The battle will die off to just desultory firing, and not a lot of casualties will occur after this point until much later in the afternoon. Getty will move his men back from the crest of the cemetery to avoid the horrible fire by Carter's artillery, and that will last another 30 minutes or something, which would put us at roughly 9:30, 10 o'clock, something like that. By that time, the Confederate steam has almost, as they say, gone up the spout. The Getty will make a leisurely withdrawal to the area north of Middletown, just about where the community college is located, if you're familiar with that site up there. And their line will extend from the Valley Pike all the way across to the west. And they will form a defensive line there, and the battle will stop as far as active pursuit by the Confederates. The Confederates will advance north of Middletown as well, establish their own line along where Miller's Mill was, just about where the pizza shop is, where the 7-Eleven is, across that road, along there and down to the west. And that line those two lines will be stationary for some several hours. Just about that time, Sheridan will arrive on the field. Finally, from riding hard from Winchester with his foam-drenched horse, and will begin to reform his Federal Army for an afternoon charge that will be the focus of tomorrow's battlefield event. I want to one other time be sure that you know that these reenactors that are out here in front of you and yourselves have participated in a great event to save land that was originally fought over in 1864. So give all of these reenactors a hand, if you will. I think they're going to come up here in a few moments and have a roll call so that you know who you're applauding for, but haven't they done a great job today?